GFed, thank you so much for joining us here on The Huddle. Appreciate you taking the time. First thing I got to ask here is, for the folks that maybe haven't seen your great content, just explain for them what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So, I do only on-site content on my page. If you've seen any video I've made in the last 4 months, I am at a stadium, whether it's for a game, whether it's not during a game, checking out these facilities, essentially being a stadium tour guide and having a fun element to it. The two biggest series I have going right now is one, the WalkOn Challenge, which is mostly college focused. I show up to all these different stadiums across the country, as big as the Big House, as small as some of the smallest FCS stadiums you've seen. And I see if I'm able to go from outside of the stadium to getting onto the field, finding any unlocked gates, open doors, any access where it seems like it's open for me to walk through and hop onto the field. And then I also have the How Long Can I Stay challenge as well, which is happening during games. Well, more so after games, where I set a timer with my handy dandy stopwatch and I just tour these stadiums until someone tells me to leave. Sometimes I'm there for 25 minutes. Sometimes I'm there for 2.5 hours. It's been quite a wide variable there, but I'm in a studio right now. This is my first time doing any content from, I guess this is really my basement. It's not a studio, but doing any content like this. So most of the time you're going to see me, I'll be at maybe your favorite team stadium, maybe your rivals team stadium, anywhere in between. And I'm usually posting anywhere from a few times a week to every day at all sorts of different spots across the country, all kind of different sports, football, basketball, baseball. I've done them all.
GFed, you've produced a ton of content lately. Speak for a moment to those members of our audience who aren't familiar with your content. If there's maybe one video that you want them to view that you think kind of encompasses what you do and might kind of grab them and make them want to stick around for more, what would that one video be?
The video that I think about for that, because the big thing with my video is, unless I say in advance, I've kind of gained enough of a following where I do have some teams that reach out to me to do stuff. But more times than not, still, I'm doing this all independent, still on my own, not working with anybody. And whatever is happening that day is just what I walk into. A good microcosm of that would be the Indiana walk-on challenge, where I got onto Indiana's field probably like a half hour before they were starting their team's practice. And while I was on their field, they have one of those fields where they have the facility right outside of like the end zone. I see a player, don't know what player it was, but just seeing me walking around filming, he just cracks the door open. He goes like, "Hey, are you trying to get in here?" Wasn't my intention, but when you have the opportunity to go in the facility of a Big Ten team, like, sure. So I go in there, everyone's getting ready for practice. I run into a group of guys. One of them actually knows me from my content. And he's like, "Yeah, man, like, hang out, see everything, do whatever." So I go from just walking up to a field by myself. I don't go to Indiana. I wasn't working with anyone with the team. And a half hour later, I'm literally in the locker room hanging out with the team pre-practice. So just stuff like
That's
that.
awesome.
Literally anything can happen on a video. And I think that's one of the craziest things that's happened on a video that I've made. So I think that's a great starting point.
That's awesome. Do you
So,
think that guy knew, like, he wanted to hook you up at that moment? Or do you think he thought you were someone else that was legitimately looking for access?
The first guy that led me into the facility, I don't think knew who I was. No.
Gotcha. Super interesting. That's an awesome story, man.
so how did the idea start, GFed? Like, have you always just had maybe an interest or an affinity for stadiums? Or were you at a stadium one day and you just sort of tried it, like, without the cameras rolling? Like, oh, how long can I stay here before I get kicked out? Or how far close to the field can I get before being escorted out? How did the genesis for your content start?
Yeah. I think it's a great story, actually. So I started, the first walk-on challenge I did was on July 12th, but I've been making short form content since the beginning of March 23. So before this all started, I was making like green screen content like a lot of creators do for 4 months and some change. And I was on a work trip with my former employer, and I just did not have the time after like a long work day. I had a place to travel to after that work day to do the research, do the editing of the current stuff I was doing with this green screen basketball content. This actually was a basketball page before college football kind of took it over. So I was going on this work trip from Laramie, Wyoming to Steamboat Spring, Colorado after the work day. Did not have enough time to do the research and editing for my usual stuff. And my thought was, I've always been the type of person that's like checking out stadiums before I put it on the internet. I think there's a lot of people that like doing this too, which is the main reason I started gaining a following from those people. And my thought was, I was going from Cheyenne to Steamboat. I had to drive by Laramie, where University of Wyoming's at. I've never seen it before. So I just, out of curiosity, I was like, let's just go film around here for like a half hour, see what I go find. And their field was very wide open, probably because Wyoming's a very desolate place and they don't have to worry about intruders too much. But found their field to be wide open, filmed a few things around there, and then I, edited it quick and got on my way. And that video did really, really good. I had a lot of comments, like I still get, saying to go to all these different places. At that time, I didn't think that I had the resources and the ability with a full-time job completely unrelated to sports to do that. But I'm based out of Chicago. I came back from that work trip. I had some time on my hands that weekend. So I was like, shoot, I can't go from Ohio to Florida to Arizona and back around, but I can go to Northwestern and do a video there. So I went to Northwestern, did the second walk-on challenge. That did really well. And then after that happened, then I started going to like Illinois, to Notre Dame, places really close to Chicago. They kept doing better and better. And that's where I just started going further and further with it. Sometime after that first week is also when the How Long Can I Stay challenge started. The first video I did with that was at the Cubs game. And going into that stadium, I knew just with how being consistent with content is important. I was like, I'm going to be at a stadium. There has to be something cool I can do here. That's what I thought of to do. I actually was there for a work event and got tickets on the rooftop and bought a separate ticket to get into Wrigley Field just to do that. Ended up definitely paying off for me. But that's kind of where that started, probably a week after the walk-on challenge. And then once I had both those series going, we just started going everywhere, and it turned into what it is now.
GFed, one of the things that I appreciate most about your content is that I'm learning while I'm watching them, whether it's how far away you can park from a stadium without a permit, or whether it's those little details about stadiums that I've never been to. I'm curious, what are some of those things that you've learned from being in all these stadiums, whether it is a detail or whether it's sort of an overarching thing that you've learned about these stadiums in general?
Yeah. I think one thing that I learned that I was not used to. So I'm from Michigan, and my team alliances are Western Michigan, where I graduated from, and I'm from Lansing, so I'm a big Michigan State fan too. Um, they both have like fairly basic stadiums as far as I'm concerned, but going to some of these other ones, one thing that I've noticed a lot of stadiums are incorporating is having just like these little like bar setups or lounges like within the bowl where you can just like grab drinks and hang out. It's way more common than I thought it would be. Texas is the prime example of that. They have like 7 since the renovation, just ridiculous like Texas stuff. But yeah, and just the way that different teams like spin it, like you'll go to like some of the more tropical locations and they'll have like these like bungalow, like daybed type things, or you'll have like these different patios out, where you can have like grill outs like in the stadium. Like there's been a lot of people that are, or a lot of programs that are ramping up, just having different spots to hang out in the stadium. I think everyone does it a little bit differently, and that's like one of my favorite things to look for.
That's awesome.
Do you have a sort of holy grail stadium that you want to experiment with, or like a bucket list stadium that you have to go see to create your content at?
I don't think I have a number one. I feel like I kind of do. I feel like the one stadium that like I have to get on the field to like because I mean, I'm planning on doing this just about everywhere at this point, but to really put like a bow on this series and do it right, I have to get on the Rose Bowl. Like, I need feet on the ground on the Rose Bowl field on my own. I think if I can do that, that would be like the best way to, you know, put a pinnacle on this series.
And then another thing I want to ask you, as you've sort of blown up like since the summer, how has life changed for you? Are you getting recognized on campuses or, you know, at NFL stadiums when you go to these games? Because I think you're at like 250,000 followers on TikTok. Are you somewhat of a celebrity now?
In the right place. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely has made things a little bit harder because, you know, when you're trying to like sneak around places a little bit to make this content, I have like had people run into me while I'm doing that, where I'm like, I actually have like a video to record right now, so like maybe save this for another time. Uh, but yeah, it has happened a little bit where people are starting to find me, and I'm trying to adapt my content, you know, day by day, that, you know, gives people all this access to these stadiums while, you know, I don't have to like, you know, be hidden to do it. And also, when I'm in these places, I like meeting my followers too. So hopefully I can get something set up where I have more accessibility to, you know, do some meetups, do some happy hours, whatever it may be, because, you know, my followers are the reason I'm in this position. I want to give back to them as well.
GFed, while I wouldn't quite label your videos like comedy, you're funny, man. You got like a very dry sense of humor and you crack me up with these little one-liners as I'm watching these videos. So I got to ask, man, are you trying to be funny? Like, are you trying to sprinkle in humor, or does that just sort of like come naturally to you throughout the videos?
I honestly think they come naturally, to be honest. Like, I don't want to be this guy that's just like, oh, I'm just like so funny, I don't have to like try to be funny. But like, legitimately, like, I didn't like go into these videos being like, I gotta like sprinkle in like some funny stuff or like have it like a funny twist to it. I think a lot of it's just like my natural thoughts. Like, I think when you listen to what I'm saying on TikTok, a lot of it is just like my stream of consciousness of what I notice when I'm at these stadiums. And sometimes what I think of, I guess people enjoy and get a chuckle out of. But yeah, that's kind of how it comes out.
Can I ask you a few rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Which stadium has the best toilets?
I mean, that's kind of a catch 22, because like, I think that to be like a true gritty college football stadium, you got to have the pig troughs. You know, I think that's just a staple of like a historic stadium. So that's kind of what I look for. But, you know, that's also like, if we're being real, not the ideal pissing situation. So, I don't have one on the top of my head that I think is like, wow, these bathrooms are immaculate. But like, I do love like a good gritty pig trough in the stadiums. I think there's a, you know, you build some character going through those.
Which stadium has the best parking situation?
Definitely not Buffalo. That's for sure. That's why I mentioned in the video. Um, man, I mean, anyone that I'm going to, not during the school day, I would say. A lot of them get pretty tough, but yeah, it's kind of, that's also kind of a catch 22, because I mean, it's easier to get into some of these places when, you know, it is business hours and there's people around like doing their jobs and whatnot. But yeah, when it's you know, Sunday morning, they're going to care a little bit less about you parking in some of these permit spots than they would Monday through Friday whenever it's got classes to go to. So it's more of a timing thing than a location thing.
What stadium had, or arena, but what stadium or arena had the best bar/restaurant vibe?
Bar/restaurant vibe. Man, I mean, like, Louisville has a speakeasy in their stadium at L&N Stadium. So like that was pretty crazy. I think Texas also stood out to me with just like, maybe not one spot that was really good, but just like the sheer amount of locations they had as well. I was pretty taken aback by that. And then also too, recently, now I'm thinking about it, my video from the Florida Panthers arena, I was very shocked by how nice of an arena they have at the Florida Panthers. and they have a bar set up for like almost every alcohol brand that you can think of. Like they had like a Patron section, a Jameson section, White Claw,
wow.
Coors Light, they even had like Voodoo Ranger, like craft beer ones. Like they had so many different setups with all these different brands. That stood out to me. I know that's like kind of long-winded at this point, but I'd say those three are the ones that come to the top of my head.
And last one from this rapid fire section, best tailgating experience you've had.
Best tailgating experience, man. I've been moving around so fast. I wish I was spending more time tailgating when I go to these spots for sure. I think one that stood out to me that I was kind of surprised that I didn't know more about, because it is an in-state tailgate that I went to, but I went to the first week one for Michigan, East Carolina, and I had no idea that Michigan tailgates like right on like the fairway of golf courses. They have a golf course like right next to the big house, and their biggest tailgate is literally like on like hole 9 of the golf course. Obviously it's a Michigan game, so they're going to have a ton of people there and a ton of fun stuff to do, but just like where they have that, like I thought that was really unique.
Couple last things before we let you go, GFed. I want the audience to know that the home team is 6-0 straight up and against the spread in the last 6 NFL games that you've attended. I think this is one of the most important pieces of handicapping information that bettors need to know. So be on the lookout for when GFed is at an NFL venue next. And the last thing, I understand you're a huge college basketball guy. Give me 2 teams, one that you think has a little bit of an outsider shot to win the national championship, or one team that maybe you think will be a good team to back at the betting window against the spread on a game-by-game basis. Who should we be looking out for?
Got it. This is gonna sound super biased, but I've felt this way for the entire offseason. I know that Michigan State is preseason number 4, but I think that they should be the number 1 as far as Vegas betting goes. Looking at the 3 teams in front of them in the AP poll, you have Kansas, who they got launched because they picked up Hunter Dickinson. We've seen Hunter Dickinson in Michigan. Do we really trust that that's going to be like the leader you're looking for to win a national championship? I don't. Then you have Duke, still have a new head coach. I don't think they're proven enough where I really am buying stock into that. And then number 3, you have Purdue, who they've just lost to a 15 seed and a 16 seed back-to-back seasons. Definitely not putting my money there. Then you get to Michigan State, have the most proven head coach in college basketball, I would say at this point. I always look for senior leadership from guards on teams that make deep runs in March Madness. They have plenty of that between Tyson Walker, AJ Hoggard. And I think they're just in a really good situation to really take that leap for the first time in 22 years. So that is like, they're not going to be the number 1 Vegas pick right now, but that's where my money would be as far as that goes. And then like looking at from an outside shot at winning it all, I really like what Creighton's doing too. I think that Creighton, I know they lost Nemhard, but I think they still got enough coming back and enough gel with what they have going on right now. The Big East teams have shown out pretty well in March Madness recently, if I remember right, and I think that they can make a splash that they've been due to do for a little bit.
It's at GFed Go Crazy on TikTok. If you aren't following him already, what are you doing? Follow him now. He's making great content. GFed, thank you so much for joining us here on The Huddle.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.